Big shocker. The NCAA is denying somebody of something again. Brendan Sorsby denied. What does it mean for Texas Tech? What does it mean for the Big 12 and college football as a whole? What does it mean for West Virginia and more on this episode of College Sports Insiders? This is College Sports Insiders. My name is Mountaineer Paul, and you can find us here where we're doing your daily football and basketball conversations 7 days a week. Let's go. Welcome to the show. What is up, guys? My name is Mountaineer Paul. I am your co-host here alongside my friend and co-host Jackson Johnson, as Brendan Sorsby is obviously the next update in that situation with Texas Tech and the gambling and the entire thing. And obviously it's a massive story, as he has officially been ruled ineligible permanently by the NCAA after gambling violations connecting all the way back to Indiana football in 2022. And this is one of those things, I think, Jackson, that, you know, it may become one of the most important legal and philosophical battles in college football, potentially in years. The NCAA has denied a reinstatement request. Texas Tech has immediately announced an appeal. Sorsby is suing the NCAA. There's violations that are tied to Indiana betting in 2022 here. Obviously, it stretches back a ways, and the NCAA considers betting on your own team the harshest offense that you can potentially do, jeopardizing the integrity of the game. Obviously, Texas Tech is publicly backing Sorsby here. They're still a $5 million investment. There's a court hearing set for June 1st, and it could impact the NFL Supplemental Draft decision, as well as Sorsby would be viewed as a high supplemental draft choice, obviously. And there's huge implications here for the NCAA gambling enforcement moving forward. I think we have to be clear right away here, Jackson. Yes, Texas Tech is definitely leaning into the addiction and recovery argument here. That's not speculation. Their president literally discussed gambling addiction treatment, mental health support, which, you know, monitoring him through software therapy and has a recovery plan publicly here. So I've seen people say, quote unquote, are they using the addiction angle here to get leniency? I have an issue with a couple of things with that. So it's not on anybody else to say whether or not somebody else is in an addictive situation. Yeah. As somebody who is 7 years clean, and I've talked about this publicly a lot, I don't think that, you know, it's just not on me to tell somebody else that they're addicted or not to something. I mean, I'm not in Brendan Sorsby's everyday life. Could it exist that this is an angle? Sure, it could. There's a possibility that he's really not addicted and that he just made some bad choices. There were small bets, right? They weren't typically, when you look at gambling, it escalates up into hundreds and thousands of dollars. It doesn't have to be that, but that's definitely the most common scenario. I would say with Sorsby, you know, he probably did have some. I would consider it, because if you look at the basic text of Narcotics Anonymous, and I don't want to get preachy here, but one of the things that they talk about with addiction is the three core components that make addiction: progressive, chronic, and fatal. In this case with sports betting, very rarely is it fatal. Typically, they're talking about physical addiction to substances. So the fatal part of this, maybe not physically, but to a career or other parts of your life and relationships. But, you know, where was his progression if he was indeed addicted? That's a question I think I would love to know the answer to, if indeed that's the way they feel. Because the progression, some people start out smoking a joint and end up on the streets shooting up, right? And some people snort, you know, pills their entire life behind closed doors, or they're drinking out of a bottle while nobody looks their entire life as a functioning addict or alcoholic. There's levels to this. There's nuance to this. It's not, there's a huge spectrum of addiction. And so I would just not judge Brendan Sorsby harshly, whether or not you consider that not an angle or whatever you want to think it is. But I had seen that speculation out there and wanted to address it. Jackson, where do you land on this? Because I know you're going to look at the football angle of this, and kind of how it impacts Texas Tech, I'm sure, and just different things like that. So I'll let you jump in with a couple comments here. What do you got going on?
Well, you did state, it's technically not over yet
Right.
because you've got June 1st next week, next Monday, because there's a hearing for that injunction. And should he not be granted the injunction, he's still got time to apply for the 2026 supplemental draft for the NFL in 2026. And a lot of people, they're kind of saying, when they got Brendan Sorsby for Texas Tech, right? He was one of the main reasons why Cincinnati got to a bowl game last season, right? This year, Texas Tech was going, okay, we want to capitalize on that playoff run. We want to win a playoff game or two. And I think if you have Brendan Sorsby as your QB, he can definitely get you a playoff win or two. I mean, he's not going to get you a national title or anything or get you to the national championship game, but he can get you a first round win or a quarterfinal win. He could definitely get you that. But and I don't really think the question is whether Texas Tech is the Big 12 title favorite without Sorsby, because keep in mind, they dominated everybody in the Big 12 last year without Brendan Sorsby. So that's one thing to remember. So
Absolutely. And I mean, what are you losing in a guy like Sorsby if you can't get him, right? He's 6'3", he's 235 pounds. I think, let me plug this in really quick before the computer dies. 2,800 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, 5 picks, almost 600 yards rushing, another 9 touchdowns. This is a true dual threat quarterback that has has an NFL size, frame and body on him. He's not Lamar Jackson, but he is a real weapon in the running game. He's not this twitchy joystick type runner. He's more of a long strider that builds up speed and is a physical guy. And he had 100 carries for 580 yards last year. So that's very impressive. And, he's not a quarterback sneaks only guy, I guess I would say. His speed is legitimate for his size. I would say he's in that 4.5, 4.6 range. And I've seen some estimates out there at around a 4.6 40 for him. That looks to be about right. It means he can pull away from backers, especially. But he is more than mobile enough to be a part of an offense and be a big part of an offense in the running game. The arm talent speaks for itself. I think, he is definitely approaching second round, maybe ish grade from the arm perspective, in my opinion. It's hard to really put a true label on it without seeing him in that combine setting. I think that tells you a lot. But, the arm is definitely real. He's got a lot of arm angles. He's got some Aaron Rodgers to him as far as the way he releases it. And his drive velocity, he can throw the digs, the seams, the deep outs. He can do the layered intermediate throws. We know that. He's really not a pure touch passer who has to kind of have that live timing on it. He can rip it. And this is a guy that when, if you overplay him in the run game or spy him too aggressively, he can punish your strong ball security, et cetera, et cetera. And the pocket movement, I think, is an underrated issue or an underrated part of his game. And that's where I think his physical tools kind of move up to another level. He's able to maneuver around in the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, and make a ton of different throws. And I think he would have been so good in this Texas Tech offense. Definitely better. He would have been an upgraded version of what they had last year, right? I do believe that. What they had last year was very good. Most years you would be really happy to have a starting quarterback of that caliber. But this is a step up. And, I considered Sorsby probably the second best quarterback in the league, or third. Some people would have Hoover above him last year. Obviously, I'm a Sam Leavitt guy. I always feel like Sam Leavitt, if fully healthy, is the best quarterback in the league. And I think that'll prove to be true at LSU this year. But I do think that there's a world where Sorsby could have been the most productive, especially on that offense with Texas Tech this year. It's a big loss. But as far as what pertains to this here and what's happening in this situation, we know he completed inpatient treatment. He's admitted the wrongdoing. He's never denied the bets that I know of, has he? And so he claims he never bet against his team. So that's kind of the Pete Rose approach to that.
Oh,
Not saying that he did or didn't. I'm just saying it's what Pete Rose did. And he claims he never manipulated any outcomes. He claims that he never bet games he played in. So Texas Tech's argument is kind of, it was an addiction behavior and not fixing. They're two separate things, correct? So I think the NCAA's response is pretty simple. They're just saying, look, man, the second you bet on your own team, integrity is compromised. And how are we to know if you're doing those behaviors? How can we know? And so we're just going to go with the broad stroke of the paintbrush and kind of bop on the head here, right? Because what the NCAA is really scared of is you have to have precedent, and they're terrified of a gambling scandal. I mean, could you imagine what it would do to the sport? It could potentially ruin the sport, Jackson.
And you would have a humongous media circus on it. Like you would be having people that don't talk about college football or college basketball or sports as a whole talking about Brendan Sorsby and Lubbock, Texas.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I'm in the camp of, I don't think he should play. I think it's, you made a big mistake here, and you have to own up for that. I don't want Texas Tech to have to suffer necessarily. I like Texas Tech, but I think, this is one of those situations where it just looks so bad if he comes back. Now, if they can prove that he never bet on a team that he bet on with like documents, maybe you can salvage some of it somehow. But at this point, it's going to court. And I think there are a lot of people angry about that because it's like, man, why are you fighting this? You're clearly in the wrong. You're kind of using a loophole here to go to court and maybe use a Texas Tech judge to, a Texas Lubbock level judge or whatever to kind of get an injunction or whatever. And that's the thing, I think an issue a lot of people have with it. But people, especially people on the Texas Tech side of this, they've got $5 million sunk into this guy. They have to try to get it out of him. I don't know what the verbiage was in the contract, if he already got the money or if he was promised a certain amount. Obviously, Texas Tech knows they have to win now. The momentum is there for now. And I think Will Hammond could be – I mean, there's actually a world, Jackson, where Will Hammond, because he's so talented, especially with his legs, could to potentially put himself in a really good spot here. Yeah. And if I'm a Texas Tech person, I'm probably not too – obviously, Sorsby is a better player. There's no comparison. But that's only because Hammond hasn't really proven himself yet. From a physical tool standpoint, I love what Hammond brings to I do. I mean, I think he's a guy that could potentially sneak into, I don't want to say Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year or anything crazy like that, but like people realize like next year he would be like he would have some Heisman buzz potentially. I think he could have that kind of year with the kind of team they have. Because there's a lot of talent on that team.
Reminds me of it's eerily similar to the 2010 Oregon season when Jeremiah Masoli got in trouble and basically, because he got suspended and he was going to be eligible to return for 2011 for Oregon, but then he was like, no, I'm entering the portal. Screw that. And then he transferred to Ole Miss for 2010. Didn't exactly work out the way he wanted to, but you had Darren Thomas take it over for Masoli in 2010. Things worked out for the Oregon Ducks, except the Auburn Tigers getting in the way for national title. But I mean, I'm not saying we're seeing a national title run irregardless of who's at QB. But there again, there's one thing to keep in mind though. For 2026 Texas Tech, I could see where it's kind of like 2025 BYU, where everybody's only talking about the QB position, not about all the other positions. Because you remember Jake Retzloff last year got kicked out of the program for breaking the school rules, right? Everybody thought, oh, BYU screwed. They're not going to be competing for the Big 12. guess what happens? They're smacking everybody off the face of the earth in the Big 12, except for Texas Tech, of course. Like the only team that could really give a game against BYU in conference play was West Virginia. And yeah, they got beat by double digits, but it looked like a game for a moment.
Yeah, don't remind me. Obviously, Bear Bachmeyer looked like a Heisman candidate in that game. And that's a great point with Bachmeyer. I mean, he's a freshman. Hammond's got a year under his belt, I think, maybe two. I think he's got at least a year under his belt, I'm pretty sure. And so let's talk a little bit more about how this impacts West Virginia, how this impacts the rest of the Big 12 right after the break. All right, guys, we are back. No ad reads to do just yet, but in practice, I think it's good to have some separation from one segment to the next. So that's what we're doing. And in segment 2, I'm still going to crack open a zero sugar dew for you, Jackson. Tell everybody all the different places they can find you. I'm unlocked on West Virginia. Where about you, buddy?
I'm on Alabama with the Voice of College Football, SEC with the Voice of College Football, the Jacksonian. You can find me on guest appearances on Locked On West Virginia from time to time, twice, 3 times a week. But you can also find me right here on College Sports Insight.
It's been more than twice, 3 times a week here the last little while, but I appreciate you.
Well,
oh man. All right. So Brendan Sorsby and how this impacts the Big 12. I think a lot of people have gone over this. Jackson, from a purely competitive standpoint, obviously, if Texas Tech officially loses Sorsby, it does change the conference race a little bit. I think that's the reality of it. It's also another reminder of infrastructure and why it matters so much. I think because, obviously compliance, monitoring, mental health resources, support systems, leadership structure, all that stuff really matters. And schools can't operate like 2005 anymore. Like it's one of those things where programs like West Virginia, for instance, are heavily investing into modern operations and the analytics. We just saw Chuck Lilly, who was on the other day. They're in there, they're using AI to do certain things now. They're using analytics to do certain things now. And so, to be a modern program in analytics means that you have to have a professionalized structure. And so I have 5 big takeaways from this scenario. Number 1, I think Texas Tech is leaning heavily into the addiction/recovery argument here. I think that's clearly part of their legal and public relations strategy. I'm not saying, or I'm not trying to say that Brendan Sorsby doesn't have an issue. I'm just saying that that's the way they're going to play it. Obviously, you don't want to just be like, yeah, he was a selfish guy, bet on the games, right? I mean, at the end of the day, like, you don't want that to be the case. If that's the case, then there's no salvaging it. So, and I likely, because there were so many bets, sure, I think there's a situation that that you could see where it would be potentially addiction level stuff. It's so hard to speculate on, and it's really not fair to do that. It's hard, but number 2, Jackson, I think the NCAA views betting on your own team as the ultimate integrity violation, man. Like it's the one rule they don't want you to break, and something, that could potentially get your career the death penalty. Yeah. Also, this case is going to become a massive precedent. If Sorsby wins this case legally, future gambling related type eligibility fights could explode, and then you get into some murky waters. That's why a lot of people are scared here, because if he wins, then okay, I'll use the 5 for 5 for West Virginia as a basis here, Jackson. The 5 for 5 rule, obviously, if it applied, West Virginia was going to probably have to go to court to get one of their players eligible in Brendan Lorient. Basically, kind of, using that little loophole, similar to what Texas Tech is doing here. You've got a judge in West Virginia you feel good about. I've been told this privately, and some people have acknowledged it, that, West Virginia kind of feels like they have a good situation to potentially get Brendan Lorient eligible. And if they pass the 5 for 5 and he doesn't, because he only played 4 years, obviously, and why don't I get my 5th year kind of situation, and a judge can do an injunction and you can play. So there's that aspect of it. And I think that, similarly, that's kind of what Texas Tech is doing here, except instead of like we've seen. Imagine all the different eligibility court cases we've seen in college sports, and now it turns into potentially the gambling ones, right? Because if there are no consequences for it, actually, that you can just get an injunction, guys are can potentially could get a little bit more.
Oh, it's gonna feel like the Wild Wild West.
It could. I'm not saying it would happen. I think for the most part, people have integrity, but like the money that you could make on a situation is a lot. And if especially like let's say you're in the national championship game or something crazy like that, and you have you can control an outcome to where you make millions of dollars, and you can do these through third party people. It's not like it goes through you, and if you're smart enough, it could create some issues, right? And I think just cracking down on it and making it look like there's no possible way to return from it, to me, is the best way to handle it. I know that Texas Tech folks don't like that, but I think that's the way you do it. Number 4 is the Big 12 race is going to change dramatically if this happens. And by dramatically, I mean Texas Tech goes from number 1 to maybe number 2 or number 3 in that vicinity. It's not like their season is over by any measure, but I think you dock them a little bit because you've got a BYU team that returns basically everybody intact. I mean, they got the running back, they got the quarterback, they lost, some of the wide receiver to help, but they got some back. Unfortunately, Parker Kingston is gone, but they do have some pieces left. And then my last takeaway is, I think modern college football is becoming legally and structurally just so chaotic. And the more stories like this make me sad because we just didn't have to worry about this stuff in the offseason of 2015. And NIL, gambling, lawsuits, compliance stuff, the mental health, roster management stuff, it's all now interconnected. And how do you manage it all as a program without governance from the government? Like, can somebody please step in yet? Do we have to continue to go down this path? Do we have to continue to set ourselves down this path to destruction for the sport? That's one of the only pure things left in America that's not been touched by the left or the right. Can we please keep it the way it is? That's all we're asking for. Like, we're, just a few rules. Give some antitrust, a few rules. If you had that, unfortunately for Sorsby, but you wouldn't have this court case coming up because there would be antitrust laws in effect. You wouldn't have to worry about a court case. You could sit back and make judgments based on the facts of a situation. And obviously you wouldn't want the NCAA deciding that. But at the end of the day, Jackson, I think this is one of them things that, unfortunately, I'll give you one more recovery quote. One of the first things I was ever told in recovery when I first got – so one thing, a fun fact about me is I went to almost 20 inpatient rehab facilities before I finally got clean. I'm one of those people that people thought was never going to figure it out or get it, right? These are like 4 to 6 month programs. I didn't always stay 4 to 6 months, but, like I entered that many. And one of the first things I was ever told was, ain't got enough pain yet. You ain't got enough pain yet. The greatest motivator for change is pain. Until you suffer, literally, really suffer, you're not going to change because there's no consequences. Why would you? Similarly, in college football, what consequences have we actually suffered? Yeah, we've lost some regional rivalries. Yeah, we've lost some of the pageantry of college football. But have we actually lost anything yet? It still feels pretty normal on Saturdays in the fall. So what happens if the SEC breaks away with the Big Ten? Or what happens if something else happens and Olympic sports die? Or whatever thing you want to carve out as a reason. Why not have some foresight for once in your life and actually put some things in place? We call them, and back to my old knowledge well here again, but we called them, if you're dealing with somebody that's an addictive person, you give them what's called protective factors, right? You give them buffers between them and what could potentially derail them, whether that's a support system, whether that's knowledge and love and support and all these different things. You can do the same thing with the NCAA. You can give buffers and protective factors in between college football and the end of college football as we know it now. And I just need that to happen, Jackson, before I go crazy.
Oh yeah.
Soliloquy over.
Oh yeah. And to your point about like the Big 12 or where it's at, like I've noticed that I don't see BYU on the schedule for Texas Tech. So they're definitely good to go there. Like the non-con schedule looks like a cinch because you got Abilene Christian and Oregon State and Sam Houston. But Friday night you got Houston.
You just disrespect Sam Houston.
No disrespect.
I'm kidding.
Dude. But it's oof. I would not want to be in their shoes at Tech. Just get the cigarette and the blindfold ready.
What's their conference schedule like? Did you say?
So the conference opener is against the Houston Cougars on Friday night on Fox.
That's a losable game.
Yeah, but it's at Lubbock, so the home game, the home stretch is harder than the road schedule for Texas Tech because
share it up on the screen.
Here we go. Let's share it, shall we? There we go. Let's share it. Here we go. There we go. So we got the first road game against Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those years where you think it's going to be like a turnaround, right? It's kind of up and down, up and down. Last year, Colorado had a losing record. Will Colorado have a winning record this year? That's what we're going to be asking ourselves. Then you got the bye week. You got a revenge game in Lubbock, Texas against Arizona State. And that's going to be a good one right here for the Red Raiders. And that's going to be a teller of signs of who's most likely to go to the Big 12 title game.
Interesting how this lines up for Texas Tech. Like you got Colorado, then you got the bye. How many games before Colorado do they have? Is it just the three, the cupcakes?
The 3 cupcake non.
Okay. Well, no, you got Houston mixed in there. Actually, is that Houston game? Is that a conference game?
That's conference. Yeah, Houston, Texas, that's a conference game.
I wasn't sure if it was scheduled from way back before and it's a non-conference game or not. Sometimes that happens. You ever seen that happen? It's pretty crazy when that happens.
Oh, yeah, California, Colorado, 2011.
Your brain never ceases to fascinate me. But anyway, so obviously that Houston matchup's big, but outside of that first 4 games, like you said, pretty well they should be. We're going to say they're undefeated heading into Arizona State. And, down that stretch, man, I only see 1 or 2 opportunities for them to slip up. I think, obviously, Arizona State, you've got them at home, though, so you're lucky. You go to Nippert. We don't really know what the Bearcats are going to be this year. Obviously, you lost Sorsby, but, they're always going to be in that 6 to 7 win range, probably with Patterson at the helm. I know you're not a big, Satterfield at the helm. I know you're not a big Satterfield guy, Jackson. So, what is it you say about him?
That's for more in his favor. I would say, okay, I think Cincinnati's got a chance, but I'm just not seeing it. Like if it was a November game, Cincinnati would be in big trouble. But late October, this could be a trap game for Texas Tech.
Some people think Oklahoma State's going to be a sneaky conference championship kind of team. I'm not of that mind. I think they'll be a bowl eligible 6, 7, maybe 8 wins. I don't see them in the conference championship picture at all. As I said, I covered them for a month this year during the portal while Cody was sick for Locked On Oklahoma State. And I know that roster well. It's a very talented roster on offense. They certainly have the horses on offense to be very good, but that doesn't mean much I think their defense is going to struggle. So we'll see. I mean, I wasn't there for the entire build, but what I saw them bringing in was, average players. I don't think they've got a great defense, but I mean, you never know. Maybe they'll have a good scheme. Maybe they'll be able to keep themselves propped up. But as far as losses for real quick before I'll let you go, losses, I think Arizona State, you mentioned them, because I think with Dillingham, I think Arizona State will bounce back. Some people don't believe they will. I give Dillingham the benefit of the doubt for now. Arizona, obviously going to be a very tough game, but once again, they got him at home. All these tough games they could lose, they got at home. They get West Virginia, the toughest game on their schedule at home. in all seriousness, but I do think West Virginia could be a team that could be dangerous for them.
Oh, yeah. One thing to remember for Arizona State, This will be 4 weeks after their London, England game against Kansas. So Arizona
They should
State,
be acclimated.
oh yeah, I mean it's just like you're going from you have to go to College Station, Texas for week 2 against Texas A&M. Then you got to go to London, England to play Kansas. Luckily, you got your week off. You got the Baylor Bare Necessities coming to your backyard on October 3rd. You got Hawaii coming over to your backyard October 10th. And then you got to play Arizona State at Lubbock. Texas Tech at Lubbock, Texas. Man, Arizona State, I feel like they're going to get blistered. They're going to be looking like they're blistered.
Potentially.
Texas
I think Dillingham is one. If I could start a team with the guy, he'd be on the short list. I really like him a lot as a coach.
He's amazing.
Great offensive mind, obviously, and knows talent. I'll be interested to see. I mean, he was begging for money, like a lot of coaches were. And did you see that press conference where he said, "I know somebody can give us $20 million." But at the end of the day, I think they had a pretty good offseason. I'll say it again. I think people, and I know I'm biased, and call me biased if you will, but I can make the case for you guys that you shouldn't be sleeping on the Mountaineers this year, Jackson.
No.
Obviously, not
all West Virginia.
Don't sleep on them, obviously. But I mean, when you look at West Virginia from the perspective of, okay, who did they bring in and what does it look like? Last year, we brought in 50, 60 players, 40 seniors, but they were lower level guys, a couple G5 guys that didn't work out, and you won 4 games. Probably should have won 5, maybe 6 if you got past, a couple slip ups here and there, but you just didn't have the depth to do it. So this year, West Virginia brought in the same number of players. I love what Josh Pate said. Josh Pate said on his show, and this is such a great way to phrase it. If you just looked on paper at West Virginia, you'd say, well, hell, they brought in 45, 50 guys again this year. They're going to win 4 games again. Until you look deeper. And the deeper part of this is, on my show, I've said this ad nauseum, West Virginia, last year, Rich Rod gets hired in December in the second portal window with no high school recruiting class. So they had to build the entire team out of the spring window, which means all the good players were basically picked over. The guys that we took chances on, like a Jamori Robinson, who was obviously the defensive player of the year in the American, didn't even play until 5 games into the season, and then was so out of shape he never made an impact. And those are the kind of guys we had to go after because they were either ineligible, fighting eligibility, et cetera, or they were seniors, or they were really productive at the lower level. And it just wasn't a well-balanced roster. They had a couple upsets with Houston. They beat Pitt. Obviously, it was a good win. But overall, it was a season that we just didn't have the talent. This year, you've got a top 20 portal class. You've got a top 20 high school class coming in with multiple 4-star freshmen and a couple that are going to make impacts right away, and a couple that are potentially elite players, specifically Kevin Brown and Mario Latimer and Matt Sigg. And so when you look at what West Virginia did, Jackson, especially on the offensive side of the ball, I do believe that they started the rebuild there in the second year and said, we're going to fix the offensive line come hell or high water. They went out and got Rick Trickett, who, if you put his resume up against every offensive line coach in the country, his would be better. He's coached for 50 years. He's put over 40 guys in the NFL. He's won 2 national championships with Nick Saban and obviously Jimbo Fisher at Florida State. He's 78 years old, but he doesn't move or act like it. And he still coaches the same way. And last year, his offensive line paved the way at Jacksonville State for the nation's leading rusher. And they've had the top 5 rushing offense 3-4 years in a row. That system comes with the nation's leading rusher, Cam Cook, along with 2 of their offensive linemen that were first-team all-conference guys. And you add in another 4 starting offensive linemen from the portal, other places. 3 of those guys had never allowed a sack. I promise you that's not a misnomer. That's not did he read that wrong? No, that is the legit thing. Like, there's 1 sack, I think, out of all of them, actually. It's either 1 or 0. I can't forget which one it is. So, you add that in. So I do think our offensive line has the chance. Obviously, you've got to get these pieces to mesh. You've got 2 returning guys from last year's offense on the O-line returning. You got 2 guys from Jacksonville State that ran the same offense. And I think I think if any combination of three of those guys are going to play, and you're going to have two more newer pieces to it. And I think this offensive line has a chance to be potentially the best in the Big 12. I know that sounds hyperbolic. I know some people would roll their eyes at that, but West Virginia heavily invested in it. That's what they did. They went there first. They sunk $5 million into it, and they said, we're going to get there better first there. That's where we're going to fix it, because Rich Rodriguez just can't survive without a rushing offense that's good. You add the nation's leading rusher behind that, and that's a pretty good start. You bring in Mike Hawkins, who runs 4.3 from Oklahoma, and you start to see like, okay, this is getting to be pretty, interesting. Obviously, if it's Scotty Fox, then you've got a freshman who played a lot last year and was very good and won a couple ranked games. One was ranked until Pitt went. I don't know what happened to Pitt down the stretch. And then last but not least, the wide receiver room, 5'6" guys over 6'2", totally changed the body style in that room. Several very talented players. Prince Strachan comes over from USC. Obviously, Teron Francis comes over from LSU, and multiple other pieces that you really like. Jaden Bray is healthy again. He was Oklahoma State's second best receiver 3 years ago now, if you count this year, and has been injured, unfortunately, back-to-back years. But he is an NFL guy if he can just stay healthy. And so we feel like we've got a chance to be a top 30, top 40 offense again, and a top 10, maybe top 5 rushing offense. Defensively, there are questions, but I do think West Virginia is going to be a team this year that can scare some people, and potentially, if they get it figured out on defense, especially with Zach Alley, a guy that you paid a lot of money to get, from Oklahoma. You poached him from Oklahoma. They didn't want to lose him. Like you made him come from the offer that's in the opportunity. And so there's a lot of pieces on the defense I think that can work, but certainly it's not as a sure thing in my mind as the offense. And I think West Virginia is going to be a team next year that can scare some people on Saturdays, Jackson.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and just rounding out the rest of that November schedule, because we talked a little bit about Oklahoma State. We've got Texas Tech going over to Baylor as the last road game for 2020. And we got Thanksgiving night against the TCU Horned Frogs in Lubbock, Texas. Honestly, it feels like this is a pretty friendly schedule for the defending champs for Texas Tech, honestly. Feels like a pretty good schedule. I mean, your toughest games are at home. The road games are not really looking tough. I mean, like Baylor, I've heard all about DJ Lagway. I've not heard a lot about anybody else. And I don't think that's going to end well for anybody in Waco, Texas. That's the team that's just going to get smacked by Texas Tech.
Chris Record in the chat says, in the field of psychology, cognitive dissonance is described as mental phenomenon when people unknowingly or subconsciously hold fundamentally conflicting cognitions. Yeah, I mean, in other words, you've got you're at conflict with yourself. You've got you're at war with yourself. I get the whole thing. It is definitely a thing. It's like knowing that smoking causes cancer, right? That's a great example of it. To relieve the discomfort, you could exercise every day, even though you know that smoking is still going to cause cancer. So I get that. I understand that. And it's definitely potentially at play here if you're talking about the Brendan Sorsby situation or whatever you're alluding to. But, cognitive dissonance is definitely a very real thing, and it impacts a lot of people, right? I've got these two things that are clashing. It's definitely interesting in psychology. So, but yeah, so Sorsby obviously is going to appeal this, like we alluded to that. Where do you land, Jackson, before we get out of here, on, do you think that they should just do whatever they have to do to play? Or do you feel like, come on, man, like you bet on the sport.
Next man up.
Next man up. I understand that. I think it's, if this was West Virginia, I was trying to ask myself this question, like, and it's so hard to know what you would really feel until you're in it. But if I was a West Virginia fan and my belief was that he didn't bet on the sport, or on himself necessarily. Let me say that instead, or his team. If I actually believe that, then I would stand up for him. If I couldn't prove that, then I would probably lean towards, unfortunately, we just need to move on without this person. And I probably wouldn't agree with, I don't know. I have a hard time with this. Let me know in the comments, guys. How do you guys feel? Am I reacting wrongly to this? I mean, because I'm open-minded. I'm not saying I'm stuck one way or the other. To me, it feels like kind of wrong that they're appealing this. I feel like you should not be arguing this unless there are some things I don't have the details for, which is possible. And that's definitely possible. But, you know, if the facts that we have are the facts that we have, and, you know, I'm sorry, but it's hard for me to believe a guy that made thousands of bets didn't place a couple $1 bet on himself. And the thing is it probably wasn't, there wasn't ill intent there. I don't think that,
No.
you know, but it's a really tough, this is a tough decision. I would not want to be a decision maker in this. The NCAA has to, they literally have to take the stance of he's done. It's just the only way you can't even allow 1% of this to get into the sport. There's no way. And that's my biggest problem with this is, can you allow him to come back? And if he does it allow other people to feel like they have, there's no consequences? Like, if I do this, they can say I can't play anymore, but what I can gain in the short term,
there you go.
And then I just move on to the NFL, and that's that, right? Or what if you don't have an NFL future, but you're just a really good college player that can affect games? That's where I think it gets scary. A guy, it's pretty easy to deduce. Like, I think most of the time, I'm an average player. I'm above average. I got a shot at the league. And obviously there are some people who are going to believe they're good enough to play in the league when they're not. But there are guys out there self-aware enough to know, like, I was a good college player and I can affect games, if I pretend like I pull my groin on specific play or, whatever it is. I don't know. But it's just, it's one of those things where it's probably already happened and we don't know it. But certainly don't want it to. You want to have him down hard on this, man. And I guess is kind of where I'm landing. But I'm open to anything else anybody else has to say. Before we go, College Sports Insiders on YouTube. We would love for you guys to show up there. We've got the majority of you guys on X watching right now, close to 100 people. We would appreciate if you guys come over to YouTube and just type in YouTube, College Sports Insiders. It's real easy. You see the logo down here in my right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner. Would love to have you guys come over and subscribe to the channel. I think we've got around 200 or 300 people. There's not very many videos on the channel yet. We've got some videos do really well. Some do 3,000-4,000 views, I think, on the channel in the past. So it was growing really fast. But unfortunately, Troy and I had to stop doing it for a little bit. So, and like I always say, Troy is always going to be welcome back on the show if he decides to come. But he had some things happen in life, and that's the way life goes sometimes. So make sure you're checking us out here if you can. Locked On West Virginia, I'm there 7 days a week. Jackson also records a lot, mostly 7 days a week as well. And that's what we do. We love sports. We love talking about it. Hopefully you guys love watching us talk about it. And if you do, make sure you're checking us out every day at Locked On West Virginia or here on College Sports Insiders. Jackson, you got anything?
Yep. And you can also check me out on Alabama at the Voice of College Football, SEC at the Voice of College Football, and the Jacksonian, along with College Sports Insiders with Mountain and Paul.
That's it. Guys, until the next one, we always, always, always want you to never forget one thing. Don't forget College Sports Insiders, baby. Let's go.